Hi there everyone. Today I'm reviewing Antifragile, Things That Gain from Disorder by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. So Nassim Nicholas Taleb's Antifragile comes after the success of his other book Black Swan, but he mentions that this book is the real apogee of his work. I was intrigued by his investigation into how we deal with randomness and turn it to our advantage, instead of trying to plan everything and deal with any randomness by cutting it off before it begins. The centre of his argument is understanding that there is no current word for the opposite of fragile. He puts forward that anything anti-fragile is able to deal with these random events more effectively, and that anti-fragile is a word that also incorporates an acceptance and moving towards these random events, even if they're not necessarily good for us. It's more of a cost-benefit analysis that the reward is potentially greater than the risk. And it's almost as if the things that really do work are better able to deal with these events that you can't plan for. And that this often involves a moving towards that. So there's two terms which can help us understand this: hormesis and mithridatization. The latter comes from the Pontic king Mithridates, who was obsessed with poisons. Adrienne Mayer has done a superb biography on him if you're interested. But anyway, he learned to take small dosages of poison to build up immunity to larger ones and larger dosages that could kill him. In fact, when he died, he actually had trouble committing suicide because he was so resilient to poison, ironically. Hormesis is similar, but the pharmacological definition is that a substance is taken in which taking the poison actually makes the host itself stronger, similar to a vaccine. And you can see on page 37 of this book for the discussion of these two terms. But Taleb points out that although these move us towards understanding anti-fragile, we're not quite there yet. They basically show us the necessity of having some of the bad thing to become more resilient. Systems need some agitation to make them tougher, in other words. And so Taleb kind of drives towards much of modernity becoming self-serving, antithetical to this idea of anti-fragility and scared of randomness, or at least not acknowledging that the potential gain might outweigh the potential cost in random events that we have to deal with, and therefore it shouldn't be such a bad thing. Indeed, in chapter 9 he mentions the Stoics, and uses Seneca as the main example of this, that emotions aren't to be discarded, but instead to just keep the ones we kind of want, keep the good, ditch the bad, and continue. He shows a good understanding of Stoicism that is often easily misunderstood, making the point that most people want Stoics to be like those who study Stoicism, a common mistake I've seen in commentary on it. Because if you take, for example, Epictetus, he often talks about, do the actual doing, not just the high-level thinking. And I think a lot of people get trapped in all this high-level philosophy. I'm going to open with a quote from this book as well. The worst problem of modernity lies in the malignant transfer of fragility and anti-fragility from one party to the other, with one getting the benefits, the other one, unwittingly, getting the harm, with such transfer facilitated by the growing wedge between the ethical and the legal. This state of affairs has existed before, but is acute today. Modernity hides it especially well, end quote, and that's on page 375. So Taleb leaves no stone unturned in his analysis of where we are in terms of anti-fragile, fragile, or somewhere in the middle. One table on page 115 looks at the fragile costs of interventionism, since interventionism often comes in to account for some structure or random event, and to force a more linear path. Yet Taleb points out that often this leads to worse knock-on effects than if we had just let the random event occur. In ethics, people who are the most anti-fragile are those who take on the most risk. An open quote. So table 7 represents another triad. There are those with no skin in the game but who benefit from others, those who neither benefit from nor harm others, and finally the grand category of those sacrificial ones who take the harm for the sake of others, and that's page 376. Examples of this are saints and warriors who take on difficulty for everyone, and I should say sacrificial difficulty. Citizens, on the other hand, take on their own risks to sit in the middle category, or bureaucrats who only serve themselves and so are fragile, the undesirable category. So the former are the closest to anti-fragile in an ethical sense because of the sacrificial element. They take on the difficulty, are willing to confront the randomness, and face sacrifice for the benefit of everyone, not just themselves. So structures will even go as far in society as to misattribute things to find cause and effect and sort of justify interventionism. Not everything has to be linear. Not everything has to be explained, assured, safe, and knowable. It's instead the viewpoint of Seneca to discard what you don't need or what doesn't help you, to roll with the punches, and accept that things may not turn out as you wish or that you can't control everything. Trying to contain these random things is futile, but in a sense it is empowering. Taleb clearly feels like there's a societal shift away from this and in the wrong direction that should be redressed, and uses numerous examples to illustrate this, some of which I'm not always sure I necessarily agree with, and sometimes it can feel like a stretch to just fit his system. But the overarching theme, concept, and its links to various disciplines is well thought through and interesting. And it is wide-ranging, even the ones that I sort of do agree with. I'm always sceptical of books that come up with a system or concept and try to link it to everything. But in this instance, I can definitely see where it's true. It may be difficult to get your head around and is often tricky, particularly in the very technical appendices, which he does, to be fair, label as very technical and not for everyone. But Taleb makes his argument convincingly and adroitly. So in terms of final score for this book, a lot of this book really, or at least the reading of it, is just understanding it. And in writing this review, a lot of the assessment is whether the concept of anti-fragile is a worthwhile one. I happen to believe it is. The book is heavy going, jumping around to different aspects of anti-fragile, but for the curious, for the open, dare I say, anti-fragile, who are open to learning about how we might be heading in the wrong direction in many disciplines, there are rewards to be reaped here. Just don't expect a simple read that you can just blast through in a couple of hours to get there. So I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. It's really well thought through. It's very interesting and quite a unique book, really. I don't necessarily agree with everything, but it's definitely worth your time. It's quite a tough one, I would say. But it introduces a concept that's quite unique and stands out for me. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 for Antifragile. I'll be reviewing many more books like this and books across a range of genres. So like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.